Wish I did.
All right, we're live. Hey, everybody, and sorry we're just a minute late, just last minute preparations and chatting, so sorry. As you know, we've got Frank back um, from, oh gosh,
Geeky
Geeky
Gecko
Gecko
Creations.
Creations. It was the last word I always forget, but anyway, Geeky Gecko's Creations, sorry. It's not your channel, I'm just forgetful. And he's got a cute little guy there. Tonight he's
I
going to
love
talk
the
to
color and the pattern.
Yeah,
He's going
same.
to talk to us about some of the other pets that he keeps, and just to kind of refresh our memory, I'll ask him if he'll just tell us a little bit about himself and how he got into reptiles and that kind of thing. And thank you for being back, Frank, and thank you everybody in the chat for being here. And please give us your questions too. Mike
Yeah,
and Pam.
thanks for having me back. The first episode we talked about my number one passion, which is leopard geckos, I would say. Good evening, Dragon Lair. But there are some other reptiles that I really like as well. Rob Bass, he's one of our followers, so that's cool that he's coming over here. There's a lot of new people coming into the reptile hobby as a whole. Now, I don't know if you guys have a similar story, or maybe you'll hear this from more reptile people, but most reptile people love dinosaurs as a kid. And then that transitions into reptiles, which could transition into a reptile business one day, which is basically what happened for me. So that's kind of the short end of how I got to where I am now. I've always just had this really weird passion for reptiles. Even when I was younger, I wanted to be a paleontologist. Do you know what that is? Because I wanted to like study specifically dinosaur bones. But then I changed it, and at like 8 years old, I wanted to be a herpetologist. Most people don't even know what a herpetologist is, but it's the study of herpetology, which is reptiles. So basically, ever since I was 8 years old, I've just really had a passion for reptiles. I've kept them on and off for the better part of 20 years, but the last 5 years, I would say I really started gearing towards isolated focus, creating content around leopard geckos, and then yeah, basically the last 2 years I've been at it full time. So I've only been at it full time for 2 years, but if you see me petting him, it's because crested geckos are so soft. If you've never held a crested gecko, yeah, like Punchy, if you haven't held a crested gecko, they're awesome. I know you said you don't have one, but did you hold one before, or? Oh, man.
My kids had, especially my son, had a lot of different.
Yeah, you got to go to a reptile show, whatever reptile shows in your area.
One of them.
Oh, you see him? He just tried to bite me right now. But that's okay, because their bite is not that big of a deal. And it could have been because maybe he got poked. Yeah, he might have got poked by my beard. So one thing with crested geckos is they don't have eyelids. Remember leopard geckos? They have the ability to close their eyes. Crested geckos don't have the ability to close their eyes. This one, all of that white pattern on it, it's a mutation called harlequin. Which is basically just like wonky patterns spread all over the animal.
I love that. He's so
yeah,
pretty.
It's really, really cool. Now, the unfortunate thing,
like candy or something, like chocolate.
It's like candy, yeah.
Chocolate candy, yeah.
The unfortunate thing about crested geckos is that they do something called firing up and firing down, meaning that at different times of day, they're going to be displaying their most colorful colors, and at other times of day, they won't. So like I could tell you, this guy right now, he is like pitch black when he's fired up. But as you can see, he's more of like a brownish, dark grayish kind of look right now. That's because he's fired down. And so that's the unfortunate thing about crested geckos, is that they fire up and fire down, whereas leopard geckos, they just always look the same. You know what I mean?
They say they're real soft to the touch.
Super soft to the touch.
Is that like fur or hair?
You know, so it's still scales. They're still a reptile, so they still have scales. But whatever kind of scales they have, like it's just very, very soft compared to like a leopard gecko is actually kind of harder scales and beady. Like when you're petting a leopard gecko, it feels like beads when you're petting it. When you're petting a crested gecko, it feels almost like felt. Like, you know what felt feels like? It's almost like you're petting felt. It's really crazy. Yeah, so, and if you ever get the chance to hold a Leachianus gecko, which comes from the same island as these, but they're like 10 times bigger, those are even the more softest. You know what I mean?
Is it
Oh,
possible,
yeah, I should grab a gargoyle gecko, too.
Is it possible those guys have the micro scales? A lot of things, fish and snakes, are called scaleless, but it's just that their scales are so tiny, they still have to have scales. Is that the case with that guy, maybe?
That definitely might be the case. Yeah, for sure. Let me grab a gargoyle gecko as well.
Haley, welcome. Working on a new chameleon exposure.
Somebody was asking about gargoyles. Now, cool thing about gargoyles, gargoyle geckos, they also fire up and fire down. However, the pattern on the gargoyle gecko does not fire up and down, only what they call the base skin tone. So you see all of that red, that always stays red. That never fires up or fires down. But the white skin tone that you see of his, that will get darker when he's fired up. And he just jumped onto the camera right now because that's what they do. They jump. So that's the thing with crested geckos and gargoyle geckos. You got to be careful of them jumping. But they're very like air resistant and stuff like that. You know, they could jump from like 4 feet and like hit concrete and be fine. I would not suggest that, of course, but a lot of people worry about their geckos falling from high heights because crested geckos and gargoyle geckos have more like wind resistant toe pads and stuff. They kind of catch the floor a little bit more as they fall. But still, I try to advise people, if you're holding any gecko, crested gecko, leopard gecko, if you're holding them 3 feet or higher, I try to advise people. Hold on, I got a gecko on the loose. I try to advise people to sit down while they hold them. Okay, went under the couch. I'm gonna grab it real quick.
Uh-oh. I think you have a cat, if I'm not mistaken. I'm keeping an eye out for Susie Q. I forgot to mention she's setting up for an event with her daughter, so she'll try to get here.
Oh, okay. Now, gargoyle geckos.
Jump.
You keep seeing that. Huh? Gargoyle geckos are going to be a little bit less sticky on their hands than crested geckos. And it's not really sticky like glue, but what I mean is the bottom of their hands has something called lamellae, and it's basically like rolls of skin. And those rolls of skin act like suction cups whenever it sticks to a certain surface. I believe that it was actually shown that crested geckos have such sticky toe pads that their toe pads could even stick to Teflon, which is supposed to be like the most non-stickiest surface in the world, right? I think there was an article that I saw one time that was talking about the crested gecko still being able to stick to Teflon. I could be wrong about that, but if somebody finds that on Google and can confirm that for me, then I guess I'm right. But so yeah, based on the look, which one do you guys like more, the gargoyle gecko or the crested gecko?
The gargoyle for me.
And the gargoyles are called gargoyles because they have, like, you see those horns?
Yep.
Those horns on the top of their head?
Yep.
So that they kind of resemble, like, you know, the gargoyle, you know, like from the cartoons or from the mythological gargoyle. Now, personally, I really like the gargoyle gecko as well. They're a little bit more rare than the crested gecko, a little bit less worked with. But if you're somebody who's trying to like start a business, you know, get into what you're passionate about. But right now, crested geckos are the second most financially affluent reptile in the world. The first affluent reptile is ball pythons. The second is crested geckos. So
Wow.
crested geckos are on a big, I'm gonna grab the crested gecko because this guy's a little more jumpy.
Okay, Google says geckos could cling to wet Teflon. It says
there it
it's
is.
not that as long as the surface repelled water, such as a waxy leaf or Teflon, the gecko could stick to it.
Okay. And you can see his balls right there. That's how you tell male or female. You see that sac?
Oh my goodness, this is turning.
So I don't know if we discussed this last time, but reptiles have two penises. That's why scientifically their reproductive organs are called hemipenes. Hemi meaning multiple, and then penes obviously referring to like their reproductive part being a male. So, you know, mammals have one penis, so to speak, but reptiles have two. So if something goes wrong with one of them, they still have another one to function with and reproduce, you know?
Well,
So
I could see me getting several of those.
yeah, the crested geckos are amazing. They come in lots of different colors. You could get them in red. You could get them in yellow. You could get them with Dalmatian spots. Let me show you one with Dalmatian spots. A lot of people like Dalmatians.
Right, Jamie? Damn, he's not savvy to your filth. H.O. Coffee. Oh, did I say that out loud?
I am so innocent, Bob. I don't know why you pick on me like that.
And sweet too. Sweet too, right, Mike?
Good thing.
Okay, this one is a subadult male, but you can see the spotting on him.
Yeah.
So he's something called a Dalmatian crested gecko. And the Dalmatians are basically just how it sounds. They have black spots, and if they can actually come in other spots. So if you have Dalmatian crested geckos that have red spots, they call that confetti spotting. And the red spots can also be like green or like olive. So some of the most diverse Dalmatians out there, they have black spots, red spots, and like greenish olive spots. You know what I mean?
Wow. Now, do you breed these and sell these?
I do. Let me show you what a baby looks like. They're actually really interesting.
Guys, if you haven't checked out his website and what he has for sale on there, it's awesome. Awesome.
Now, I've been working with crested geckos for about 3 to 4 years now, but I made the decision right now to sell all of my Dalmatian crested geckos. I had like 15 Dalmatian crested geckos because I particularly don't want to work the Dalmatian project. And my time is spread very thin with all the other animals we have. So I sold off all of my Dalmatian crested geckos, and I'm going to rebuild my crested gecko collection to be more along the Harlequin lines. The first one that I was showing you that had like the white creamish pattern, that's much more what I like better. And so I want to restart.
I actually agree with you. I think the Dalmatian is really cool looking, but I absolutely love the first one you showed.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I got.
Damn, these have two penises too.
Yeah.
Now, if you really like crested geckos,
the more the merrier, Bob.
Kids go crazy over the babies. Look how little this
gosh.
little thing is. It just sits on the tip of your finger. And this one's probably like a month old or so now. So they're actually about a third of the size of this when they're first born.
Oh, wow.
But they're so tiny. When I take these to like school events, the girls just go crazy over it. And that's another reason why I think crested geckos are so popular, is that in all of the leopard gecko hobby, for the most part, I'm putting this in quotes, for the most part, males dominate the hobby, especially the snakes. Now that's kind of changing in the sense that a lot of women are really getting into ball python breeding, leopard gecko breeding, all of that kind of stuff. But I do believe that the crested gecko world actually has more female crested gecko breeders than male breeders, because girls just really go crazy over these geckos. There's just something to it that really captivates the attention of women, you know? Now, yeah, that's not to take anything away from the guys. There are a lot of very successful crested gecko guys, but out of every reptile that exists out there, I would say more women are into crested geckos than any other reptile, you know?
It's the two penises.
Well, leopard gecko's got two penises too, so.
I think probably the only thing that has
Gorgeous.
really stopped me getting into crested geckos is they lose their tail so easily.
Yeah, they can lose their tail. Now they are a little bit reluctant to do so. So like, I'd say 50%. 50%. This little one just bit me. I felt the bite right now. I would say 50% of the crested geckos out there still have their tails. You know, so it's like a coin flip. Whereas with leopard geckos, I would say 90 to 95% of leopard geckos still have their tail. The percentage is very high, and they regenerate their tail, except it comes back funny shaped most of the time. But you're right, crested geckos don't regenerate their tail. However, there's a name for that. When they don't regenerate their tail, they call them frog butts, and people love frog butts. You would think that it would affect the price in a negative way, right? That someone would pay more money for a crested gecko with a tail than a crested gecko without a tail, but it's so accepted in the hobby, people don't even care whether the crested gecko has a tail or not.
Now, when you have a group of those hatch out, I'm assuming they're not live born, are they?
No.
Do you keep the babies together till they're a certain size, or?
Yeah, so this is very similar to leopard geckos. Female crested geckos will lay 2 eggs every single month, and they might do that for the whole year. If you keep males and females together year round, the females might just breed year round. They might take like a couple months off where they're laying duds or something like that. It's at that time that a lot of breeders, when the female is no longer laying eggs, a lot of breeders will separate the male from the female if they were keeping males and females together, just to give the female a pure break. However, there are some breeders that just leave them together year round, and the crested geckos will lay somewhere between 10 to 20 eggs over the course of 12 months for you. And they hatch in pairs of 2, and crested geckos, I would say, are very good at being kept in groups together. So like this little container, to show you. This is, let me flip the camera around here. Oh, now see on this StreamYard, oh wait, no, that's just turning off the camera. Okay, settings, camera. Let's go with the flipperoo. Okay, so ignore my couch, but this is how I set the babies up pretty much. There's actually 4 crested gecko babies in here. I'll lift this up, and you can see 2 of them right there. You see 2 of them right here?
Yeah.
And then there's 1 on this thing right here. And then the other one right here. You can see the other one down there. So crested geckos, and they all have their tails. None of them drop their tails, and they're kept together as babies. Crested geckos are very okay with being kept in groups, either when they're younger or when they're older. Now, when a crested gecko is breeding, it does have a hormonal response to where they may get territorial once they're adults and they're breeding. So you as the breeder, you just have to keep an eye to make sure that no one's getting beat up, no one's losing their tails, no one's losing vast amounts of weight from stress of being kept in a group. But babies, it doesn't appear that it stresses them out at all. You can give them a little bowl of medium mealworms, and then I give, since there's 4 of them in here, I give them 2 locations to eat from. And this is just the fruit paste diet that I mentioned in the last video, but I'll re-mention it. Crested geckos eat a fruit paste diet mainly, and then insects as like supplement to their diet. So that's another reason why a lot of people really like them. You don't have to feed them insects technically, but if you do feed them insects, I think it's better for them. They're going to grow faster and grow bigger quicker. Because another downfall to crested geckos is they take 2 to 3 years to grow up to become breeders. So it's a long investment. If you buy a baby like this and then you want to raise it up to breed, it could be 3 years before that animal's old enough to breed. Now, most animals will be breedable within, I would say, 1.5 to 2.5 years, depending if it's male or females. Males are ready quicker than females, but still, that's a long commitment to wait on a small gecko to grow up. Whereas with leopard geckos, you could breed a leopard gecko at 5 or 6 months old if it's up to size. You know what I mean? So
now, are they born the color that they're going to be, or do they change color as they grow?
they do change color as they grow, and specifically with the Dalmatians, they get more spots as time comes in. And then with the Harlequins, they will generate more pattern over time. You know what I mean? So like that first gecko that I showed you, they'll get more pattern as time goes on. But yeah, this is the little setup. I have these little air vents. You see that little air vent, which is just cut out with a drill, and then I hot glued mosquito mesh. And what that allows me to do is that allows me to spray every single night into their home.
Even the babies want to elope on the site. we used to say people that got out that weren't supposed to get out had eloped. Yeah, the babies want to.
And
so I have this is the sprayer here, and I will just go by every night and spray like 2 or 3 seconds into every single one of those holes, and that's their water if you don't want to use a water dish. You know what I mean?
And I noticed you had those 2 eggs sitting in a cup on the shelf. I don't know if that was just because for the show, but do you have to incubate the eggs?
No, so that's another positive thing of crested and gargoyle geckos is they incubate at room temperature between 70 to 80 degrees, and it's actually thought that it's better to incubate them between 70 to 75 degrees max. So yeah, they can absolutely just sit on the shelf. And as you can see, crested and gargoyle geckos themselves, they have no supplemental heating. They don't need any heat as long as the geckos are kept in 75 to 80 degree max temperatures, you know? So I just keep them in these really easy, convenient tubs, and then that's it. And then because I have a cat, I had to pay $150 for this. It's three. I'll show you how this is set up. But it's 3 kids' gates that are 4 feet tall, and I had to bungee them together, and it covers this whole thing because the cat would always walk up to the geckos and be clawing at the screen, you know? So if you have cats or dogs, I would suggest keeping the geckos in a completely separate room or using a gate system like this. For beginner, is there a real pro or con between the sexes and crested geckos? Males grow faster. females grow slower. You really don't have to worry about females becoming egg bound. Lady Rorschach, I know that a lot of people like try to scare people like, oh, if you get a female, it's going to become egg bound potentially. The chances of a female becoming egg bound, especially if you're not breeding them, is so low that it's really your choice whether you want to get a male or female. So that kind of answers her question. But yeah, that's our little crested gecko setup. Because I focus on leopard geckos, I would love to expand the crested gecko setup over time. So hopefully by round whatever, at some point when you guys interview me in the future, I'll actually have a whole room dedicated just to crested geckos. And I'll have like a lot of the harlequin ones and stuff like that. But for now, I have about 4 or 5 gargoyle geckos that I'm breeding, and I'm gonna chill on gargoyle or crested geckos. I'm not gonna add any more to my collection until I've made the leopard geckos a complete success. I really want to focus on the leopard geckos and then use the profits of the leopard geckos to buy a new gecko room or a new, get a house for the geckos, and then eventually pay for the price of the geckos themselves. Because crested geckos, you could get them really, really cheap for $50. But the type of crested geckos that I want to be getting into, they literally go for like $5,000 to $10,000. It's extremely affluent of market right now for crested geckos. So
would crested or gargoyle geckos do all right in a screen enclosure?
They would, but they need a little bit more. Okay, so there's a couple options. They need humidity. They're from an island that has 60 to 70%, maybe even higher humidity year round. So it's thought in captivity, they need some level of humidity to help them shed. I don't know how much this has been tested. Like if somebody put crested geckos in a super dry room, but then provided them just like a humid hide, if the crested geckos were okay. I don't know about that, but that is one thing you could do. If you have a screen enclosure, you're gonna have almost 0% humidity in there, right? Thank you for your sub to our channel as well, Lady Rorschach. If you have a screen enclosure, you're gonna have 0% humidity. Even like 10-gallon tanks or whatever that have a screen lid, those are gonna have about 0% humidity because all of the water is evaporating through the ceiling. So the only way to get good humidity is if you're keeping them in like plastic tubs like this or completely sealed enclosures. However, you can give them too much humidity where they develop respiratory infections. So this is the key to crested gecko keeping. If you're gonna keep crested geckos in a tank with a screen lid that has 0% humidity, you wanna make sure that you make 1 or 2 humid hides in the tank. So I don't know if you can, actually, yeah, you can see this right here. Let me show you. This is a humid hive. It's filled about halfway with eco earth, and the females use it to lay their eggs in. But because it's moist in here, this is also an area that the crested gecko can go and bury itself in if it needs to get more humidity for its skin to be able to shed. So if you have a screen enclosure or an enclosure that is evaporating and has 0 humidity, just make sure that you have 1 or 2 of those humid hides in there. Okay. In addition to that, you might want to spray their cage every night for 3 seconds. When you spray their cage for 3 seconds every night, then it's going to give them some water to soak up off of the walls and stuff like that. And it should be evaporated within 24 hours. And that's a good thing, because the other side of the coin is you want to make sure that whether it's a baby or whether it's an adult, your crested or gargoyle geckos are not kept in 100% humidity 100% of the time, because that can kill them. And it actually happened to me with one of my baby gargoyle geckos. I was kind of newer to gargoyle geckos, and I kept it in a little cage that did not have great ventilation, and it was way too humid in there, and the baby gargoyle gecko died. And when I started talking to more crested and gargoyle gecko breeders, they said the same thing. You don't want it too humid, especially for babies, because that could wind up killing them from respiratory infections and stuff that they get from it being too humid. So again, these aren't frogs. They're not salamanders. Their cage should not be wet, but they should have an area of their cage that they should be able to go to for humidity. And it should dry out within 24 hours. If you're spraying their cage, it should dry out every 24 hours so that they're constantly not living in a wet environment. And then option number 3, some people buy humidifiers for a room, and they will just humidify that room up to about 50 to 60% humidity, and then they won't spray at all in their crested gecko's cage. They'll give them a little bowl of water. They'll humidify the room to 50 to 60% humidity, and then that's it. You know what I mean? They won't worry about spraying and the cage drying. So there's a few different options that you could go through, but you don't want it too dry. You don't want it too wet. Just make sure you give them a humid hide, you know?
Okay.
Does temperature of eggs affect sex like it does with tortoises? Right now, there's no proof that I've seen that crested geckos or gargoyle geckos are temperature sex determined. There was some article recently I saw that someone was going to talk about, and I can't remember what gecko it was. But as of right now, the current research that I'm aware of does not support the idea that crested geckos or gargoyle geckos can be temperature sex determined, which means you could incubate them at a certain temperature for males or a certain temperature for females. But with leopard geckos, you can temperature sex determine leopard geckos. 80 degrees will produce females, and 90 degrees will produce about 70 to 80% males. So you could do that with leopard geckos, but to my knowledge, not crested geckos. Should I get my big snake? You want me to talk about the big snake?
Well, do you want to do that last question or
Oh, besides human hides, is it recommended to use aluminum tape on half of the screen to help lock in moisture? Yes, you can do that, and I have done that. I've used saran wrap, and I've saran wrapped like 90% of the lid, and then I just monitor how humid it gets in there, depending on if I want to continue that process or not. Actually, while we're on the topic, let me show what I do with our sailfin's cage, because that's exactly what I do with our sailfin's cage, is I tape the screen lid. So this is a sailfin dragon. It's kept in this big 55-gallon tub that I've converted into a tank, but there used to be a screen lid here. You can kind of see like the holes of the screen lid, but I had to duct tape over all of those holes because sailfin dragons, unlike most reptiles, they need like 100% humidity. This guy in here, there he is right there. Let me see if I can let me see if I could take off the lid here. Actually, I'll prop up the lid. So, sailfin dragons, do you see him sitting on top of his water bowl?
Yeah.
These guys need about 100% humidity. They need it very, very humid, and they need a giant water bowl to constantly soak in, because they're from the Philippines, Indonesia, and other Asian localities where it's very, very wet and very, very humid 100% of the time. If these guys do not have close to 100% humidity, they will develop really, really bad shedding issues, and they could wind up losing tails, arms, fingers. It can be really bad for them. So this is him. They are a little bit more skittish, but if you work with them a lot, they're tameable. I'm trying not to touch him right now because I see that he has some poo in his water, and if I put my hand in there, he's gonna jump into the water bowl and splash poo all over my camera. And I'm so icky about that kind of stuff, so I don't want to do it. But they are a super cool lizard, super rewarding, really, really underrated. But they need UVB, similar to a bearded dragon. They need UVB, and they need a very high heat source. They need like 100-degree basking temperature. And then another thing with sailfins is if you keep them in a glass tank, they will rub their nose on the glass tank until you can see bone. They don't get it. For some reason, if you keep them in a glass tank, they will rub themselves really, really raw. Now, some people have come up with different methods in a glass tank to make it work, but the reason I like this tub is because it holds 100% humidity, and this guy doesn't rub his nose raw at all because there's no glass at all in here. So, and they're called sailfin dragons because you can kind of see that like they have those crests, you know, of like sails and stuff like that.
What is the blue sponge thing there?
Oh, that's just an artificial perch for him to rest on. If I were to use, if I were to use like real pieces of wood, they would get moldy and they would promote like mites and ants and those kinds of things because this is like the perfect environment for those creatures to live. So I try to make everything as much as possible like really hygienic, really washable, and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I do for him. Yeah. I was keeping him outside, but even with the giant water bowl in Arizona, they still have really bad shedding issues. Let me see how well the connection holds up, but I'll show you what his old cage was. Okay, so I didn't say I was going to talk about this because they're all asleep right now because of the winter, except the juveniles. These guys were out today, but this was the sailfin's cage. But in Arizona, yeah, he would rub his face on this mesh and it was starting to get pretty bad. But also in Arizona, it's just so dry, so that even with a giant water bowl, it was just way too dry for him. You know what I mean? So in here, another thing that we're known for, we're pretty big into tegus. So you see all these little guys here?
Yeah, cool.
Those are Argentine red tegus. And then those are juveniles that are growing up. And then we have caging here for all the adults. So I love giving the adults like big outdoor enclosures. It makes me feel really good. You don't have to clean up the poo or anything like that. So it makes it super easy. But in Arizona right now, it's starting to get pretty cold. And so tegus go into something called brumation. Every single winter, they'll hibernate like a bear for like 3 months.
It was 17 degrees here last night.
Wow.
And we've got snow on the ground, so.
Now,
yeah, where you guys are is way more colder, right?
Are you selling those tegus also?
We do. We're sold out this year. But next year, in about June, we will have new babies hatched. So they wake up in about April. So I would say the the typical cycle for tegus in Arizona is they go to sleep in about October, November, and then they wake up in about March to April. And in April, they're going to start breeding. As soon as they wake up, they start breeding. And within a couple of weeks or even a month, you might have eggs from the females. Now, the really cool thing about tegu females, they could lay up to 60 eggs. I think the largest amount of eggs that was recorded for a female was like 70 or 90 or something like that. But on average, they're going to lay about 30. I'd say on average, you're looking about 25 to 30 eggs. So as a breeder, you just have to be prepared to feed that many mouths because tegus are relentless with food. I'll get another one of my my favorite pets, and then I'll come back.
Damn, I bet it's this big snake. We still haven't seen his ball pythons either. You can have it. I hate cold. Same dragon lair. Well, I like mild weather. 60s, 50s. Love it.
We had a high of like 26 today, something like that.
Dang, it was in the upper 70s here today. I walked the dogs 4 times already, and they're like, enough already, enough. They got another one before bed.
And it snowed last night, so we still have some snow on the ground because it never got above freezing.
Hey, Stephen, welcome. He's gone to get us another reptile to look at. I think it's a snake.
Okay, now as far as pets are concerned, this is probably one of my favorite like pets, just a pet. He is a. Do any of you guys know what kind of boa this is?
He's not your common boa, that's for sure.
So he is a Dumeral's boa. Dumeral's boas, I have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel about them. They have these really cool, I call them dragon-like marks on their head. Like if you could see the top of his head right there, they almost look like dragon marks. They also have this little pouch underneath their chin that like puffs up with air, and they could actually like puff it out at you and stuff like that. So they're the most vocal of boas. And in addition to that, they look really cool. They look like some leaf litter, right? But they're also one of the most gentle boas, and they don't get super big and they don't get super small. So they're like the perfect size boa. They're the perfect temperament. Like I let like 2-year-olds hold this guy. I take this guy to school events and little kids are holding him. I'm monitoring, of course, and just making sure. But out of hundreds of kids and adults, he's never bitten anybody yet. And so Dumeral's boas are known to be very, very like calm boas, great boas. He's grabbing onto the chair back here, so I'm just gonna let him do that. I'm always careful. Whenever a snake gets close to your eyes, that's when you want to be careful. You just want to be on edge, because if a snake were to bite you in the eye, snakes have like 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch teeth, and it could actually do a lot of damage. Like even if it bites you on the hand in the wrong spot, it could do very bad nerve damage. So that just shows you how calm this boy is, that I'm not even worried about him biting people. I just hand him off to people, and he's good to go. You know what I mean? But yeah, Dumeral's boas, some of the prettiest boas, most well behaved. They're bigger than a ball python for people who want something bigger, but they're not as big as like the common boa species that you were talking about. They call that like the BCI species, the boa constrictor imperator or something like that. That's the common species that has all the morphs and mutations. Those females can actually get up to like 9-10 feet, whereas a Dumeral's boa female is basically going to max out around 7 7 to 7.5 feet. So it's not nearly as big as a regular boa female, you know? So it's, to me, it's the most manageable size boa. You know what I mean?
That's a male there.
This is a male. We actually wound up getting rid of the female because I didn't want to breed them anymore. I just wanted to keep him as a pet. So he's just used for birthday parties, school events. We take him to reptile shows, which, by the way, I don't know where all of you guys are from, but the next 2 shows that we're going to be at is in the Phoenix Reptile Expo, which is here in Arizona next month in November. And then if any of you guys are in California or close to California, we'll be at the Reptile Super Show in Pomona in January. I think it's like January 7th and 8th is the show. So those are the next 2 shows on our show circuit. If anybody wants to come see us in person, say hi, take some pictures with some animals or whatever. I normally bring him to shows, but and same with our big tegu. We have like a giant 4-foot tegu that is also a sweetheart, and I let little kids hold the tegu and stuff like that. I don't know if we're gonna bring them to the next 2 shows. The tegu is gonna be asleep, and I really want to focus on like engaging and interacting with people around leopard geckos. So I might just bring leopard geckos out, but in the past, we would bring this guy to every single show, and people would love handling him, taking pictures with him. I call him Hulk because he's a gentle giant. And you can see just his little tongue going there. Amazing animals. Which, by the way, if you have a dangerous snake or a dangerous monitor lizard, tongue flicking is good. Tongue flicking means that the animal is thinking. It means that the animal is soaking in the environment around it. And for the most part, it means that the animal is calm. If an animal, like if a snake or a monitor lizard, which has the forked tongues, if they are not flicking their tongue, that could mean that they're being defensive and they're ready to strike. They're not thinking, they're in defense mode. They're not trying to interpret what's going on around them and make sense of the environment. They're ready to kill. They're ready to defend. You know what I mean? So tongue flicking, very, very good. And you can see how much tongue flicking this boy is doing. He's just trying to absorb everything that's going on around him right now, you know?
I'm surprised.
For this guy, same thing, 55-gallon enclosure for this guy, same as the sailfin dragon. So
just a 55, you said?
Yeah, 55-gallon, which is
oh wow, 4 feet.
It's about 4 feet long, 2 feet high, and like 1.5 feet wide. If you want to give them more space than that, that's perfectly fine. Some people give them less space, but since I only have one and I'm not breeding them, I don't need to worry about like efficiency so much. So I don't need to go smaller with him. I could give him the 55-gallon plastic tub from Home Depot, which is about 4 feet by 2 feet by 1.5 feet, you know.
I'm going to start looking for these at some of the reptile events. I'm going to one this weekend, and I'm going to see if they have them just to hold one.
Yeah, Dumeril's boas were really, really cheap about 5 years ago because nobody wanted them. And then when out of nowhere, they started to boom in popularity. I forget why. They're a cool boa. They're a good boa. They're not because not as many people want them, not as many people breed them. So they started to become more rare in the hobby. And then their price skyrocketed. They went to like almost $700-800 for babies when they were prior to that. They were like $100, $150 for babies. So when the price skyrocketed, guess what happened? People started breeding them again. And now the market has so many of them again to where like the price has kind of stabilized. I think the price is back down to like $200 or $300. But yeah, there was a time a couple of years ago when these guys started to rise in popularity and the babies were selling for astronomically higher prices than they ever were in the hobby just because people stopped breeding them. But if you were to find these guys at a show, I think you could find one for like $200-300, maybe less. But yeah, just make sure it's not like running snot. Make sure it's not drooling. Those are signs of a snake that could be respiratory infections. You know what I mean? Another thing with snakes is mites. inspect the snake for mites, and do a little bit of research into who you're getting the snake from, if that person is known to have mites, or what their reviews are online. Because mites, if anybody has a problem with mites, let me know. I have a very easy solution to fix it. But mites was one of the most feared things in the snake hobby, and it still kind of is feared a lot. There's just not a lot of people know how easy it is to treat. And so we ordered this one snake from somebody that wound up having mites, and so I had to treat like an entire room of snakes for mites. 2 weeks, it was done, no problem, super easy. There's this animal safe spray. Actually, let me show you what it is.
Awesome.
This, not a lot of people are aware of this because it's kind of a new solution, but Frontline puppy spray. This is for puppies that have like mites and lice and those kinds of things. It's not, guys rapping me. It's not meant for snakes at all. However, certain people in the snake hobby found success with it, and they started making videos about it. So I tried it myself. I'm definitely a brand advocate for this, because mites would have been, forgive my language, mites would have been HELL. It would have been hell to get rid of mites if it wasn't for Frontline puppy spray. But because of Frontline puppy spray, it's easy peasy. You don't have to worry about mites at all.
Yeah, and guys, notice, be sure if you do that it's the puppy spray.
Yeah, it's not even advertised for reptiles, but there are a few people in the reptile snake community that are privy to this knowledge, and now they swear by it. So I tried it, and now I swear by it. It really works. Like, it really does. And you could spray it right on your animal, right in your animal's cage. You can't do that with other mite treatments, and that's why mite treatment used to be so difficult before. You would have to remove the snake. You'd have to spray down the snake's cage. You'd have to wait until it dried, because those chemicals are dangerous to the snake. You'd have to treat the snake separately with other materials. Frontline puppy spray is a once and done thing. You could spray down the snake's enclosure. You could spray down the snake. You put the snake back into the same enclosure that you just sprayed down, and within a week, all the mites should be dead. But if you want to make sure, you will just treat it one more time. So you could do like 2 or 3 treatments if you just want to make absolutely sure that all the mites die. And then it's also a good idea during that period to keep your snake on something that is like white craft paper or white paper towel, because that will show all the mites dying off of your snake and give you more confidence of whether they're all dead or whether it needs a new treatment. But yeah, super, super easy.
Now, do you keep ball pythons, you said?
I do, yeah. Let me, this guy is actually in our ball python room as well. We were going to end it with the sailfin, but I guess we could end it with the ball python room, which is pretty cool. So ball pythons are the #1 most lucrative selling reptile in the hobby, and that's because they come in the most mutations. There's literally hundreds. There's literally 10,000 or maybe 1 million combinations you can make with ball pythons, and you can't say that about any other reptile. So they're really, really popular for that reason. I'm just putting the snakes back. Actually, I can show you the snakes. So you see the snake's cage right here? 55-gallon tub from Home Depot, newspaper, big water dish. And you don't want to fill the water dish all the way to the top, because when the snake gets in it, they'll slosh it out. But you want to fill the water dish enough to where the snake cannot knock over the water dish. They do need ventilation, so ventilation will be important in these tubs.
Lady R, people are using it off label. Sometimes that happens with pets. It's not recommended for reptiles. It's not endorsed for them, but it works, and people are finding it to be safe, is what he's saying. It's the same Frontline, yes.
Okay, so this is...
If you read on the label, Frontline kills mites. And why that's important is dogs and cats are prone to get mites in their ears if they're outside. So, sorry.
Oh no, you're good. This is a
That one I
baby.
knew the answer to.
This is like a little baby ball python growing up.
Oh.
Now, ball pythons are a little bit more nippy than boas. They're going to be a little bit more bitey, a little bit more agitable. There's really nothing about a ball python that makes it a good pet other than the fact that they're fairly easy to keep and they're really, really common and popular. Personally, this might sound weird or bad, but I don't like ball pythons as pets. Some of the adults have an attitude. Some of them bite. Some of them are difficult to feed. You know what I mean? When you're trying to feed ball pythons, some of them want to eat rats. Some of them want to eat mice. Some of them want to eat African soft fur rats. Some of them want frozen. Some of them want pre-killed. There's just a million different things that can go wrong with feeding a ball python, and to me, they don't make the best pet. But what they do make a great of is they make a great business investment, and they make a great breeding project because they're so fun to breed. They come in lots of different colors and morphs and stuff like that. So a lot of the stuff that I actually have here, let me see if I can like show something different, but I actually don't have a lot of the like really colorful stuff right now because I invested into a project called the Puzzle Project. So you can see the pattern of this snake is very like puzzle-like. There's a lot of like puzzle piece kind of look to the pattern of this animal versus, let me see, this is a big ball python. She likes to strike and eat, so I need to be careful opening this tub. Here we go. Okay. So this is a normal ball python pattern. Ball pythons have these things. Ball pythons have these things called alien heads. Do you see like this little thing right here that kind of looks like an alien head with eyes? So people call those alien heads. A normal ball python is going to be like brown and black. And then you can actually get ball pythons that are like orange. You can get ball pythons that are pure white. So like I have where is it? It's here somewhere. Where'd you go? But I have a pure white ball python. You know, a lot of people like that. Here's the banana. Do you see how like a banana ball python is kind of like yellowish? And bananas have lots of spots. For some reason, they just do have lots of spots.
Now, I'm going to be looking for a male banana soon.
Yeah, bananas are really cool, really popular, really pretty. So here's a white one.
I have a...
Yeah, people like white ones. They're really pretty. But the reason that I invested in Puzzle, which is this, see, it kind of has like a zipper zigzag pattern going down the animal. Puzzle is at the beginning stages of ball python development. So I'm kind of hedging my bet that by me getting into Puzzle early, that I could build up a collection of like some of the world's first puzzles and those kinds of things, and just have like a really rare niche of the hobby that I'm working with. But because Puzzle is so new, it's not really, there's not a lot. I don't have any of like the hottest morphs of Puzzle right now because it's so new. I'm just working with what I was able to get my hands on, which the only thing that people are selling right now is more of like the base animal stuff. Now, another thing with puzzle, it throws these like muscle patterns. Like you see how that looks like somebody flexing their muscles right here?
Cool.
Yeah, so this is a normal puzzle. And then to my right, this is a super pastel puzzle. And the pattern comes up a little bit higher on the puzzles. It's just, I don't know. It's a newer gene. It's prophesied to become really popular. And that's the reason that I jumped in. But because it's so new, I don't have anything like crazy to show you in this room right now. We mainly invested in puzzle. That was our focus. My business partner and I, we took like $30,000 or $40,000 and dumped it all into the puzzle project. So, but yeah, that's it. Ball pythons, because ball pythons are kept on cocoa fiber, this cocoa fiber gets moist, especially with their water bowl in there. Do you hear the snake? It's like huffing and puffing right now. They just don't have good attitudes. Yeah, to be honest, I really don't like ball pythons as pets. I've been bitten more by ball pythons than any other snake. The bites can do nerve damage. But at the end of the day, they're really fun to breed because of how many different patterns they come in. And don't get me wrong, they do make a great pet in the sense that you can calm them down. But for the most part, they're a little bit more agitable and a little bit more sassy than most boas tend to be. Boas tend to make the better pets, but ball pythons tend to make the better breeders, like breeding side of things, you know? But do you see this white? So because it gets humid in here, you see this white lid that I've like stapled to the wood here?
Yeah.
So if you're building your own racks, like you can see, we build pretty much all our own racks here. If you're building your own racks, this is a waterproof thin material that's called Plastex Polywall at Home Depot. It's like $25 for a giant sheet of it, and it was like $25 for me to do every single shelf on this rack. But what I'll do is I'll staple the Plastex to every single wood shelf so that when I slide this tub in, it doesn't matter how humid this room is, it doesn't matter how humid the tub is, it won't cause any mold on the wood. Otherwise, you're gonna get black mold and stuff on the wood, you know?
Nice.
So yeah. So that's it, that's our little ball python collection.
Jenny Lynn asked earlier if you use the cocoa husk, and you said you do, but she also wanted to know what brand, if you don't mind telling her.
So we use, gosh, I'm just gonna buy some more right now. Oh, it's Pro Cocoa. I think you can't go wrong with any of the brands of coconut substrate, you know? But Pro Cocoa is what my supplier works with. So I have a supplier out here in Arizona that brings it in huge quantities for good price. And because he works with Pro Cocoa, that's why I work with Pro Cocoa. If he worked with Freedom Breeder blocks, or if he worked with any of the other brands, it doesn't matter to me. I think they're all super similar. It's just a matter of convenience. What's the best price in your area? And yeah, what do you like best? They make cocoa in a couple different forms, like big block forms, smaller chip forms, and then something they call like fiber, which is almost like it's just a little bit more mossy. I don't know how to describe it. A little bit, it holds humidity a little bit better, to be honest. And I told my supplier he always gets the medium-sized chip. And then they were out of the medium chip for a long time. So he was giving us the smallest chip, like the fibery. And I told him, I was like, I really like the fiber because it's smaller particles. It absorbs more poo. You know what I mean? It holds more humidity, which ball pythons do need humidity. They need 50 to 60% for them to shed. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck with shed problems all the time. So like humidity is important. I see the Codfather shaking his head, so he knows. So yeah, I really like the small fiber, but he told me that most of his clients don't like the small fiber because it's a little bit more dusty and the dust gets on the shelves of their room and people don't like that. But either way, the medium one is still dusty. The small one is a little bit dusty. I think they're all equal as far as quality is concerned, but I did really like the smaller chipped fibrous version when I was using it for like four months or so when he was in stock for that, just because it absorbs more poo and pee, and then it holds more humidity,
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks
Why Are
for
We
the
Yelling
links.
gave the website prococo.com. Yeah, so
Awesome.
Pro Coco is pretty expensive. If you buy it directly from the pet store, you might pay like $25 or $30 per block, with the inflation prices nowadays. But if you find a private breeder in your area, like if you go to reptile shows and find people that are selling at reptile shows in your area, then you can find if there's private breeders that are selling locally for better prices, and you could oftentimes save 10, 15, sometimes even 20% off of whatever the pet store price would be. You know what I mean?
I always stock up. Even if I'm not looking for a reptile, I go and stock up on frozen food, everything.
Yeah, no, that's good. But yeah, that was the main stuff that I work with besides leopard geckos that we were talking about that I felt like I would show today. So it was pretty fun to be able to show off some of the other stuff we keep. But yeah, what did you guys think?
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. It was a nice change up from the geckos, but I love the geckos too. Yeah,
when the tegus are awake in the spring to the summer, we should try to do another live, and I could show you all the tegus out and about. They're pretty cool. I could feed them for you if you want, but sometimes like YouTube gets crazy about YouTube doesn't care about feeding videos. It's mainly like other people that care. Some people are more sensitive to it, but yeah, I usually like pre-kill a couple of rats and then I hold them with a tongue. Tegus are crazy. They could jump like 4 feet in the air to get a rat off of a tongue. They're so fun to feed. I always pre-kill the rats first so that, the rat dies to me killing it instead of the animal killing it, so it's quicker when I kill the rat. But
JJ, I'm posting the link there again. It's up above in the chat. It's the cocoa fiber.
Yeah, Pro Coco.
Yeah.
I think Pro Coco is also one of the most competitive price-wise. Like I think Freedom Breeder cocoa is a little bit more expensive. And then there's another brand that I'm forgetting right now. Maybe you know what the brand is, but
the geckos were at the start, Stephen, and then there's a video 2 weeks ago where he did leopard geckos. So go check out the start of this. It should render and post by tomorrow, hopefully. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Frank. Awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you for coming back.
Week. You're up to me, I'll tell you.
You guys are always a fun time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
No.
And anybody that knows someone that might make a good guest, or any of us that are just starting out, because that's part of our mission statement. I meant to read that tonight just to reaffirm it, but it's the first post in the video. I've had to kind of condense the language a little bit, but it's the first 2 comments in the video if you're interested in that, and I think it's also in the description. But we're all about people that are looking to start out with reptiles or just have started keeping them and can use some advice and help. I'm hearing things that I know, but I'm hearing a ton of stuff I don't know, so it's beneficial for all of us that haven't kept reptiles a million years. And plus the audience chimes in too and helps. So it's for me, it's perfect. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. But
yeah, if you need, if you want a couple recommendations for like cool people that I know in the reptile hobby that would do a live stream, I could also send those to you privately that, they're active on social media and stuff like that.
Very cool.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, of course, and so now you don't feel slighted. I've forgotten his channel name, but it's Johan, Yohan. I think Johan Reptiles. and he's coming on next week. So I've got to get his stuff posted up. So
Nice.
all right. Thank you so much. Love your channel and love your website. And guys, don't forget to go look at his website. If you like reptiles, it doesn't mean you have to buy something, but I spent probably 2 hours on there after the first stream just looking at things. And, you know, if you love reptiles, it's got some beautiful things out there. So,
Well, thank you, Godfather. I appreciate you guys. We'll see you next time.
You know where the Tennessee Fish Mafia is, where these names come from. Thank you. And
I like that. That's cool.
Thank you, moderators, and everybody in the chat that participated, and the lurkers. We love you guys too. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next
guys.
Friday at 7:30.
Bye, guys.
On the end button.